Building a legacy starts with the bold decision to take a leap of faith. Behind every empire lies a foundation of grit, willpower, and the courage to take big risks. Welcome to Entrepreneurship Unlocked, where world shakers in the business world gather to share their stories. We're diving deep into the mindset of the modern entrepreneur to show you exactly what it takes to become truly unlocked. Join us in the pursuit of excellence with your host, Seth Rudin. This is Entrepreneurship Unlocked.
Hey there, thank you for dialing in. This is Seth Rudin with IBA. I'm a senior business broker and I help the owners probably help companies make an exit. And I'm joined here by fellow entrepreneur, Christina Kwong. We're here today just to talk about business brokerage. Christina, first, maybe tell us about yourself.
Yeah, well, I'm Christina Kwong. I was previously in big tech for about 12 years. I worked for all the big tech companies at Amazon, Microsoft, Twitter, and most recently TikTok. And decided to take the leap of faith, quit corporate, and start my own thing.
Awesome. Called Pomelo?
Yep, Pomelo.
Excellent.
It's like the fruit. So, Seth, I have some questions on the business broker side of things. So, of the buyers that you have, how are they financing some of these decisions?
We have three types of buyers typically. We have individual buyers, somebody like yourself who instead you started your own company, but you left the corporate world, right? Mm-hmm. You could have bought a business instead and you would be great at it. And so they would often finance it, but sometimes they have cash or they can use what's called ROBS. ROBS is a way to borrow against your own 401k plan and pay yourself interest rather than paying to a bank. Oftentimes you don't have enough 401k to buy a business, so then you go get an SBA loan, Small Business Administration, right? So there's different loans programs. And you only help, and if you're a vet, right, there's special programs for vets that get even better. And if it's a farm or agricultural related product, there's farming loans that are actually the best products to buy a business with. And then you have corporate buyers and you have private equity too, and so they will either pay cash because you have large coffers to do so, and there are a lot of their function. Any of those three parties could use, and that's called seller financing. So that's when you have a business, they either want you to have some skin in the game, and they're required to pay a fraction of the sale comes from the seller, or it's not bankable, like a cannabis business that's not federally licensed to sell across the state. Therefore, banks can't finance it, and as a result, a seller of a cannabis has to seller finance.
Interesting.
Yes.
So let's say in the world of being a seller or even being a buyer, who do you need on your team?
These are all good questions. You're sharp.
Thank you.
You need a solid M&A advisor, business broker like myself to represent. You need an attorney who understands M&A. You don't want to take, a patents attorney and have them be trained as an M&A attorney, right? Okay. There's lots of great attorneys out there that can help you. That's a good thing. You need a CPA for tax allocation, how they handle that. And you need a financial advisor for how you're going to handle all this wealth when it comes back to you. You may need, depending on the situation, environmental specialists. If it's got lots of equipment, there might be an equipment expert to help come up with a value on the equipment. And then there are some for larger sales, there's some tax mitigation specialists that do exist that can help.
Awesome. So let's say I'm a new business owner. Well, we can use me as an example.
Sure.
If I have plans of selling my business in the future, what are some of the top three things that you want me to keep in mind?
Well, I love the fact that you're thinking about the end in mind. Okay. It's always the best thing. If you start a business, you got to figure out who wants that business later on. Right. Nobody wants the business, then you should probably rethink that business model.
Okay.
So, clarity in the financials, right? So that it's strong performance, one. Two, that it's easy to track, right? You got bank statements, they go into QuickBooks, you send them to your CPA. The tax returns pretty much match the income statement, the balance sheet. When we see, tax returns are far off from what the financial statements are, that does raise concern. Following the right set of books, as you grow bigger, over 5 million, you need to start adapting the GAAP and other more sophisticated accounting processes, especially with inventory. And so that's important. We call it the key man risk. So key woman risk. So not being solely the person that runs the business. Now, granted, where you are is different than where you will be down the road. But if we see a business that has a single owner and he or she knows everything about the business and you take them out, that means the business has a high degree of failure. The third thing is called customer concentration. So you're going to buy this manufacturing business and they have an online retailer and they're 50% of your sales. Mm-hmm. The buyer buys the business. He pisses off management. Management says, you know what? I don't want to work with that guy anymore. I'm just going to go to this other product. And now you paid $1 million for this company, and now it's worth 50% because the biggest customer left. So now you have 500K. So your loan is probably over 50%. You got a big problem. So that's a huge issue that you have to work through. And there's ways to work through it and mitigate it. There are some industries like aerospace and defense that has that. There are a couple other items that would go beyond the top three. Those are the top.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Sure, no problem.
Yeah.
Would be great.
And I'm very curious about what the industry looks like. So what are some of the trends and behaviors that you're seeing business owners and businesses take right now?
Sure. So one, they're taking steps into AI. Obviously, that seems obvious that they're looking at how can I use AI as a strength.
Okay.
Two, there's these tariff movements that's causing the supply chain to be relooked at and remodeled. So when companies have buying their product from overseas in a high tariff, they're trying to figure out can they take it into the United States or go to a lower cost. And they also need to be cognizant to look for what might be coming to. I know it's a dynamic force right now. Three are taxes, how to maximize your exit with a capital gains tax if you're eligible for it or not, making sure if you are. And then e-commerce, embracing e-commerce where you can to simplify the cost of sales, bring down the costs, and also making it frictionless where you can.
Totally. Yeah, the tariffs thing is wild.
Yes.
So it's sometimes making things more expensive to buy overseas, of course, but I think it's also incentivized people to also buy within the US as well.
It helped one of my past clients.
Yeah.
They were buying stuff from China and they were able to negotiate that party down. The supplier in China came down on price and they found alternatives statewide. Did it. So that was the goal of the tariff, right? Kill the tariffs to bring it back to states, help promote US labor. And in that case, it was frustrating for all parties, but it worked.
Yeah. And with everything happening in the world and in the US and all the fun things, what are some of the things that have stuck out most about business owners and businesses pivoting their businesses now that you haven't seen before?
Sure. So, just being creative, understanding it. There are also sellers who don't do anything and they ignore it. And either they got a great business that the customer set just loves it and they just keep buying and buying. But more often than not, they don't invest in marketing and sales and they see sales drop off. When it could be, hey, have you knocked on your door of your largest client, take them to lunch, right? And then that might awaken them like, hey, what are you doing these days now? And then they learn that you've been doing A, B, and C, but they didn't know about B and C because you did that 10 years after you started with them, and now you can sell them B and C, and now you just grow your business.
Right.
So those are the relationship sales and marketing is really important.
I agree. So when we're looking at the future, where do you see the business landscape shifting in the next 10 years?
Well, I'm not a forecaster and a predictor, so it's a great question. I think it's definitely going to be more digital and streamlined. I think information is going to be key in how you operate. You really have to make sure that your website and your search are coming up not only in Google now, but are coming up in a variety of AI search engines that are out there, whether it's ChatGPT, Google, Gemini, and so forth, right? You need to be cognizant of those things.
Cool. And so for all of the businesses out there, when exactly should a business actually consider selling their business?
So I think a 5-year minimum holding period typically is what we recommend. People want to see that your business models worked repeatedly and has tax returns that have been filed. 3 minimum, 5 is ideal. And then if you work backwards, in 2019, I had a gentleman, he had an engineering business, very successful. His wife said, I want you to retire by your 60. So he had 4 to 5 years to go. So we did evaluations for him in 2019. We found that he had a high customer concentration. We gave him a recommendation, and instead of turning down business, which would be the wrong way to fix customer concentration, he grew the business and diluted customer concentration. And hence he raised his value. We sold his business. So planning ahead, I sold an aerospace and defense company in October. We planned for that in 2023. I sold a psychology practice in July that we planned for that in 2022 and again in 2023. So oftentimes we plan ahead, they go off and do some work, and then we bring it back at the ideal.
Nice. Love it. And so what are some of the common mistakes that buyers make that you've seen when buying a business?
Sure. First, there's 2 parts to this. So one is before the purchase and second is after. So before the purchase, they don't ask enough questions during due diligence. They don't understand it. They don't foresee what they can. Usually you buy a business because you like what it is today, but more importantly, what can you do with it down the road? right? There's 3 ways to get a business. You're doing the hardest. Start a business from scratch in a brand new category, right? You started bad in the business in an existing category. You started in a new category, which is really cool. And I respect you for it.
Thank you.
The second one is start a business in an existing category and compete. Third one is to buy a business. So think about a boat, right? You're taking a brand new boat, you're building the boat, and you're literally putting it in the river with no water. And now you're trying to get water to take the boat so you can go. In this model, when you buy an existing business, the water's already in the river. You're putting your boat, now you're just determining how fast you want to go. Slow and moderate or fast, right?
Right.
And so that's a buyer can then decide, do I want to take that boat and go fast now because I've hopefully taken the time, and we'll talk about that in just a second.
Mm-hmm.
And so buyers should also make sure they're well represented, right? Just like the seller needs an attorney, a CPA, and a financial advisor. The converse is true too. And they need to be fair in the negotiation. A lot of buyers want a win-lose situation.
Okay.
And guess what happens post-sale? You need the seller to transition you. And if you made it feel like you stole their purse or their wallet and pickpocket, they're not going to help you that much, right? So you got to be wise, you got to be fair, and be reasonable, right? So once you get post-sale, you want to make sure you listen before you make significant changes. If you go in there thinking you know it all, I'm going to buy this business and change and implement all this change, and key employees leave, customers don't like it, they leave, then nobody wins, right? So you got to really be methodical, have a good transition plan, be willing to listen. There's a book called The First 90 Days. And it works for people. It was generally written for people who were at corporate jobs, but it works for people buying a business, and I strongly recommend it. And then the second book that buyers should buy is called Profit First, I believe. I may have the title wrong, but it's a great book. It's about the guy who only works 2 days a week, or 2 hours a week, or something like that. And it's a great book. It teaches you how to set up your accounts and how to make sure you get paid first, so you have a profitable businesses. And it works really well for small business owners.
Love it. Yeah, I could definitely look into that book. I think that would be really helpful.
Sure.
Yeah. So I think let's say for the buyers out there, what should they look for when actually buying a business?
Well, the opposite of the 3 things I talked about, right?
Yeah.
A profitable business, right? That the financials make sense.
Yeah.
It's a durable business, meaning it's not a fad. It's not going to come and go, right? It can be sustained. It doesn't have key person risk, right? So the woman or the man who owns the business is not solely dependent, and that they can. I think the third one to me personally is make sure you're passionate. If you buy a business and you only did it for the money, and then you learned you hated it 8 months later, not Seth, I want you to sell that business again. Happy to do it, but I'm not going to be able to sell it.
Yeah.
Because you haven't gone through to prove to a buyer why you failed, because they're going to question, why did you bring it back to them if it's open?
Definitely. So I imagine that the sales process can be pretty emotional for some sellers and business owners. Let's say Grandpa Joe's ice cream shop.
Yeah.
Put all of their heart and sweat and tears into that ice cream shop. And they, at the end of the day, have to sell it because Grandpa Joe wants to retire. So what do you do in those situations where the sales process might be a little bit more emotional versus, let's say, transactional?
Sure. And this can apply to large $50 million, $20 million business too. I always tell my clients, get a hobby when they're going through the sales process. Something, not just walking, something that really takes your mind off of what you're doing. Like if you're playing pickleball, tennis, or pool, if you're going to win, you can't be thinking about deal terms while you're playing those activities, right? You got to be focused. And that gets you fresh. This is your largest sale, most likely, that you'll do in their lives for my clients, right? Is to sell their business. They need to be clear-minded, right? And unemotional. So take a deep breath, have that, my job is to take on the hard stuff. When you get to the legal side and you start seeing red lines on it, that's when crazy stuff happens. That's where people get offended, even though they don't need to. The attorney on the other side has to do something. They got to earn their bill that they're going to give their buyers. So they're going to redline it. It's part of the game. We prep them that it's going to happen. And we do our best. There's some crazy stories I could share. You go along with that.
Totally. Well, thank you so much, Seth. I really appreciate you letting me pick your brain. You had some really great insights, especially for me as a new business owner. I've taken some really great pieces of information away as well. So thank you.
You're welcome. My pleasure. Christina, how do people find how would they find you?
Yeah, so I'm pretty accessible. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on my website. My website is heypomelo.co. So it's HEYPOMELO.co.
Great. Thank you. And I'm Seth Rudin with IBA. You find me on LinkedIn, and I look forward. And please follow me on the rest of my YouTube videos. I think you'll find them useful. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.